Okay, rhythms. This video is going to be about rhythms for beginners, what they look like, what they sound like, and how to play them. We're going to be dealing with just some of the easiest and most common rhythms in Western classical music. To start with, we need to define rhythm. So rhythm is how long a note is. We measure it not in seconds, but in beats. So now we need to know what a beat is. A beat is the underlying force in music that goes along nice and steady. It's the thing that makes you want to tap your foot, move your body as you're listening to music. That is a beat. It doesn't suddenly go faster, it doesn't suddenly go slower in most cases, but it is pretty steady and constant. So it's like ticks on a ruler. It is a measurement of length. This is a measurement of time. So how many beats long something is its rhythm. So a rhythm for a note could be 1 beat long, or 2 beats long, or half a beat long. So whenever we're talking about rhythms, we're talking about how long a note is, and our measurement there is how many beats long it is. All right, let's talk about what rhythms look like in the music. So when we're looking at notation, we're going to be calling them by their rhythm name. The rhythm name is assigned to what it looks like in the notation. It's not assigned to what it actually sounds like. We'll learn that later. But first, we're just going to learn the names for what we see. For rhythms, we can either have notes or rests. Notes are when you're making a sound with the instrument for that length of time, and rests are where you're not making any sound with the instrument for that length of time. Let's take a look at the notes first. Every note has a note head. It's oval shaped. It may have a stem sometimes, and sometimes it has a flag or a beam attached to it as well. These are the things we're going to look for when we're looking at the rhythms. Note that the direction of the stem does not affect the rhythm. So whether the stem's pointing up or pointing down, it's the same rhythm, it's the same note. All right, let's take a look at the whole note. The whole note has a hollow head. It's just an oval and it's not filled in. Half note also has a hollow head, but it also has a stem. Again, the direction of the stem doesn't matter. The half note is half as long as a whole note. Then we have a quarter note. The difference between a half note and a quarter note is the quarter note has a filled in head. So it's a filled in head and it has a stem. Again, the stem direction doesn't matter. The quarter note is half as long as a half note. So it's a quarter as long as a whole note. A quarter note is a quarter of a whole note. An eighth note, building upon the quarter note, looks like it, except it also has a flag or a beam. So it will have a flag when it's by itself. And when there's 2 of them, they'll hold hands and those flags turn into a beam. An eighth note is half the length of a quarter note. So it is an eighth of a whole note. So maybe by now you've realized that there's a whole note and then a half note, a quarter, an eighth. Each one of those is half as long as the one before it. And their name tells you what portion of a whole note it is. So now if we flip that around and go from the eighth note and then we go to a quarter note is twice as long as an eighth note, and then a half note is twice as long as a quarter note, and a whole note is twice as long as a half note. All right, the rests. The rests are kind of unique looking. They don't have a head or a stem or anything like that. Each rest looks different. They have similar names as the notes, and so they match up with how long they are. But again, they're silent instead of having pitch to them. So first we have a half rest, which to me looks like a little top hat. So you can remember hat, half rest. And then we have a quarter rest, which looks like a squiggle. These you'll just have to memorize which one is which. Now that we know what rhythms look like, we can talk about what they sound like. Whenever I talk about what music sounds like, I will use solfège. Solfège are syllables that we assign to different sounds to help us remember what they're supposed to sound like. So the solfège syllables will match the sound, but not necessarily the notation. Whenever we're doing solfège, I highly recommend that you move your body in some sort of way while you're singing, so that you can make sure that you're feeling the beat. So, speaking of the beat, whenever a note is 1 beat long, it's going to be ta. So this is one beat notes. Ta, 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 ta. And the rhythm solfège for half a beat is T. T, 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 T. So the T is half as long as the ta. So there's going to be twice as many of them as there are tas in a beat. So ta is one beat, T is half a beat, so there are two T's in a beat. Ta, T, T. And that's what the beat and half a beat sound like. Now, two beats is going to sound like a one beat note, but elongated. It's going to be two beats long. So the ah part is going to be sound twice, but the ta at the beginning will just be once. Ta. And that's it. It's just twice as long as the ta. Ta. All right, just to review, rhythm names versus rhythm solfège. Rhythm names like half note, quarter note, those are to match the notation. And rhythm solfège, ta, ti, ti, that's to match the sound. So I recommend that you take some time and look through the music in Western Classical Music for Beginner Cellists, Book 1, and just look for quarter notes, look for half notes. See if you can name the rhythms in the notation. And then go and listen to the recordings and see if you can hear tas and ts and tas. And do those separately, looking for rhythm names and listening for rhythm solfège. I have a free quick guide to rhythms that you can get by clicking on the link in the description. If you'd like to learn more about how these rhythms apply in 2/4 and 2/2 meters, head on over to patreon.com/samscellostudio and sign up for the tenor clef or treble clef tier to gain access to that video, as well as the entire sheet music and video library.